Why do we worry so much? Well, worrying makes us feel like we're doing something productive. That it's a way to relieve the anxiety that we're feeling, or to better prepare ourselves to face whatever we're anxious about. But worry is like fuel for our anxiety. The more we worry, the more anxious we tend to feel. And so why do we continue to worry when it only makes us feel worse? Worrying feels a lot like problem solving. We've identified some sort of problem that's making us anxious, and we want to get rid of what's causing our anxiety. And so worrying is a way of trying to problem solve our way out of feeling anxious. But unfortunately, our emotions don't work like this. And the more we try to think our way out of them, the stronger they become. Now, the reason worrying can't solve our problem is that usually the problem we're worrying about is outside of our control. If we had control over the things we're worrying about, we wouldn't need to worry about them anymore. We could take some action and do something about them. But when we worry, we're worrying about the future. And so we're concerned about something that hasn't even happened yet. So there's nothing we can do about it now except worry even more. The classic worry begins with the what if statement. We're trying to reassure ourselves that no matter what happens, everything will be okay. And the way we do this is to what if anything we can think of that could ever happen, and to try to come up with a plan for that what if. And so we ask ourselves, what if this happens? And maybe we come up with an answer. But then that's followed by, but what if this happens instead? Or what if that happens? Or what if this other thing happens? And so now we try to figure out the answers to these questions, and we think we're problem solving, which would be something productive, but we're actually just worrying, which is completely unproductive. And the reason it's unproductive is that when we're worrying, we're trying to solve something that isn't even a problem yet, and it may never actually happen. And so there's absolutely nothing we can do about it right now. But when we're feeling anxious, it's hard to just do nothing. And so we let ourselves worry, because doing anything feels better than doing nothing, even though what we're doing by worrying is only making us feel worse. And sometimes we actually get to the point where we think we finally have it all figured out. But then, inevitably, a new what if creeps in, and we're right back where we started, which is why once we start worrying, it can seem almost impossible to stop. And one of the worst things about worry is that even though most of the things we're worrying about don't actually happen, we still end up paying the price for them because of how miserable we made ourselves with all the worrying we were doing. And so we still end up suffering even if nothing bad ever happens. And even if it does happen, it's usually not as bad as we feared. But even if the worst case scenario does come about, the fact that we were worrying about it so much doesn't help anything, and does nothing to improve the situation we find ourselves in now. So we've still made ourselves suffer with all of our worrying, with nothing to show for it at the end. So worrying offers us no benefits. There's never any productive reason to worry. If you don't have a problem, or don't know if you have a problem, then there's nothing to worry about. And if you do have a problem, if there's something you can do about it, then stop worrying and do that. And if you can't do anything about it, then worrying isn't going to help you anyway. But of course, it's one thing to say don't worry, and another thing. One of the most important things we can do when we're feeling anxious and starting to worry is to figure out which of the things we're worried about are somewhat within our control, and so we have the ability to do something about them, and which of them are completely outside of our control, and so there's nothing we can do about them except to worry about them and make ourselves even more anxious. So the first step is to figure out which of the things we're worrying about have a solution right now, and then we take these solvable problems and do something about them, and as a result our anxiety starts to decrease. So if we're worried about getting the coronavirus, we've all seen lists of what we should be doing to help avoid getting the virus. And so that's the solvable part of the worry. Frequent hand washing and don't touch your face, and social distancing and working from home if you can, and maybe stocking up on some essentials in case you need to self-quarantine, and so on. But doing all of these things still doesn't guarantee that you don't get the virus, And while it may reduce your anxiety a little bit, there's still probably plenty of anxiety to go around. But once you've already done all of the problem solving and taken care of whatever's within your control, there's nothing left that you can do about what's making you anxious, except to go through all sorts of hypothetical what-ifs about the future that you can't do anything about right now. And so worrying about them only leads to thinking in circles, with your mind racing and getting more and more anxious by the minute. And so what can we do when these hypothetical thoughts start popping into our heads to help prevent ourselves from getting stuck in an endless cycle of worry? One of the best strategies we can use to help reduce worrying is called postponing worry. So when a worried thought pops into your head, rather than thinking about this worry right now, you simply write it down. And then try to just let that thought go and don't worry about it right now. But then at the end of the day, give yourself a worry period. And you take your list of all of the worries that you wrote down during the day and set aside a maximum of 20 minutes to go through your list and see if there's anything on it that needs your attention. And so this can be a way of giving yourself permission to not worry about something in the moment, because you know that even if you don't think about it right now, you're going to give yourself a chance to think about it later. And so if it's something important, it's not going to go neglected if you set it aside for now. So there are a couple of reasons why this is a good strategy. First, because we tend to start worrying when we're already feeling anxious. And when we're feeling anxious, we're operating out of an emotional state of mind, rather than a rational and problem-solving state of mind. And so we're not well equipped to be able to think about what's worrying us in a productive manner. And generally all the thinking we do at this moment is going to just feed back into our emotions, making us even more anxious. But if we're able to postpone our worrying and not think about what's worrying us until we're not actually feeling anxious in the moment, then we're much more likely to have something productive come out of it. And often once we're not feeling anxious anymore, the things that we were worrying about no longer seem that important, and we're able to just let them go without worrying about them anymore, or even giving them much of a second thought. And another reason why postponing worrying is so effective is that it teaches us that worrying isn't uncontrollable, and that just because a worry pops into our head, we don't have to worry about it right now. And the more we make this a habit, the more likely it is that we'll be able to just let go of our worries before they leave us with our minds racing or start to pull us into downward spirals.